Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ideas by Interpreters. Today we have with us Sonia Baron. She's one of our top Spanish interpreters. She's been with us for a while, meaning that she's been using the Boostlingo platform for quite a while now. Sonia, if you could just say a quick hello, and then we'll get started with the interview.
Hi everyone, this is Sonia.
Great, thanks for being here today. So let's start out with some of the basics. Basically, this sort of ideas by interpreters interview series that we're doing, which we started with one of our top court interpreters a few weeks ago, is just to highlight the interpreters that are on our platform and to give other interpreters who are out there an idea of what it means to be a successful freelance interpreter. So let's get started. So Sonia, thanks for being here. I wanted to ask you first of all if you could give us an idea of how you got into the industry.
Of course, and thank you, Caroline. Well, I actually, um, at first, I didn't want to be an interpreter.
Hmm.
I wanted to be in an office. I wanted to have a 9 to 5. I thought that was my thing, and I thought that I would be happy having that. And once I had it, I was not happy at all. And then I, I I remember I got fired and I had a store and I had this nail salon. And
Hmm.
I was there or I was attending my nail salon and my store for about 6 months and then I saw an ad online asking for interpreters and that they would teach us and everything and I applied and a few months later I received a call and I got hired. After that, I loved it. I closed the store, I closed my nail salon, and this is what I've been doing ever since. And I just love interpreting, and it seems like it's been my calling, and I didn't even know, and I'm very happy doing this now.
So so you like the flexibility that it gives you, I'm sure, as a freelancer, right? And
Yes. Uh-huh.
I mean, I understand the 9 to 5 life. It's not for everyone, right?
Right.
So
Uh-huh.
yeah, but yeah, no, that's awesome. Sometimes things just fall into your lap, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Um, when we talked before, I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned that you started interpreting when you were young
Yes.
for your family members, and that was something um, that maybe kind of piqued your interest in a way, or gave you a picture of what it would be like.
Yes. You know what? It's just that I had to do it whenever I was a child. And this is something that I would do ever since I was maybe in pre-K because I had to interpret to my teachers and my parents. And
Hmm.
I had a teacher who we became friends on Facebook. She told me that she remembered me from whenever I was a child and I had to interpret for her and my parents. And at that moment, it wasn't like I didn't hate it, but I was obligated to mature way too soon. And
I
so
understand.
yes, and I think that's why I said at the beginning that that's not what I wanted to do. But right now, I love the flexibility. I love that I know how to how to do this that it comes out so naturally for me and that I love my job. Like I can honestly say that I love what I do. And but I think it's because I'm prepared now. I wasn't whenever I was a child and because it's everything that I want in a job that I love it that I'm able to like right now I'm on vacation and
Hmm.
I'm able to work if I want in the hotel or I'm able to say okay I just want to go to the city or whatever, or I'm going to go visit my parents for a few days. I just take my equipment and I work there. And
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility. That's great.
yes,
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back to um, the difference between, because obviously as an interpreter, you have to have some sort of experience and training. It's not like you just become an interpreter after you've done a few interpreting sessions for your parents, maybe at a teacher conference, right?
right,
So
yeah,
there's a complete there's a major difference there, but I also I like the fact that or I think it's interesting that it's something that maybe you kind of you step away from or you're hesitant to do when you're young,
Hmm.
because you see it as a chore, right? As something that you're
Right.
kind of like, oh, I have to do this again. It's like brushing your teeth or something, right?
Right.
Um, but then, when you look at it from a different perspective, it gives you that sort of excitement and reconnection with it in a different way, which is really cool.
Yes, that you're
Um,
actually helping someone. This is how I see it now. Like I remember how my parents used to pretty much suffer because of the language barrier, and I would have to help them. And now I pretty much see my family whenever I interpret someone, or I identify myself in my family,
yeah,
and
totally.
I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. Like I'm actually helping someone.
Yeah, you're creating you're bridging the barriers, quite literally,
Yes.
um, as a lot of interpreters are doing, and it's really important to always remember the importance that you have in somebody's life on a daily
Right.
basis. Just, going
Yes.
into an interpreting session, they would not be able to communicate or portray what they want to say without your assistance. And so, looking back at, maybe doing that as a kid, I'm sure, like you said, it brings a lot of perspective into your work now because you're realizing, wow, this could be my mother, this could be my sister,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
Exactly. Yes. Like, I also, well, we have a very important job to do because I remember whenever I was a teenager, I had an aunt that had breast cancer. And
Hmm.
my uncle, he spoke English, but his English was not great. And he had been living in the States for 20 something years. So she went to go have surgery, and after she woke up, they had removed one of her breasts, and she was crying. She didn't know. My uncle was stunned. They did not have an interpreter. They never had an interpreter. It was the deep south, and the medical staff did not think of the importance to have one. So whenever we went to go visit, we didn't know what had happened, and I remember just the
Right.
shock. And I'm sure it happens to so many, and that just I remember this all the time, and it reminds me of the importance that are, well, how important our job is, really. And that I hope that a lot of people don't have to go through this, and fortunately it's different now than how it was maybe about 20 years ago. And we're
Yeah,
pretty much,
definitely.
yeah.
Like, and especially with Spanish, right? So
Right.
Spanish is it's
It's
much
growing.
more, it's growing really fast, right? And
Yeah.
so I think one of the goals for a lot of us in the industry is to help other, maybe more diffuse languages get to that level where it's
Exactly.
where it's so accessible that you don't even have to worry. Maybe you go into the doctor's office and you need a Burmese interpreter, and you just don't flinch. You don't have to worry about it. That's kind of what we're trying to make happen,
Yes.
just much like it is with Spanish. So let's continue. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked with that. But what types of interpreting do you do, and have you done? I know you are mainly doing video remote and over the phone. Have you done any on-site also?
Um, right now, I've not done on site in a very long time, but I usually just do over the phone and video interpreting because I'm living in Mexico right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
the city where I live, there are not that many foreigners. I mean, there are, but there's not enough. And so I really like doing over the phone or video, like I said, because I can travel, I can take my job with me, and it's giving me the freedom that I want, pretty
Yeah,
much.
totally. That's what Boost Lingo's for, right? It's like
Yes,
the Microsoft Office of interpreting softwares. We're trying to make interpreters understand that this is a free tool for them to enhance their careers, much like you're doing. So
yes.
um, so yeah, that's great. What kind of interpreting fields, do you feel most comfortable in? Like, I know you said that you do medical, you
Hmm.
obviously have experience in that.
Hmm.
Is that something you feel comfortable in? I know maybe mental health can be difficult.
I love mental health. Yes, medical, it's my favorite mental health because, well, I have a personal experience with mental health, so I just love it. And I feel comfortable. I I feel like, again, sorry to keep repeating that, but
No,
I feel
it's
like I make a difference because, well, there are so many people that at the end they always thank the doctor, they thank the interpreter because they have a way to be able to communicate, to be able to say everything they're thinking and to be able to say everything they're feeling. So it's really it's my favorite.
yeah, I totally understand. I used to work in social work, and I felt that kind of connection as well because you feel like you're making a huge difference in people's lives, even if you're not, maybe a licensed clinician or
Yes.
something
Hmm.
like a therapist, right? But
Right.
you're making an incredible impact in their life
Yes,
still. So,
definitely. Hmm.
um, let's see, what else can I ask you? Let's go back to the freelance sort of network. How have you been able, or how have you found it the most successful way, kind of, to market and network with clients? I know that right now you're using the Buslingo software, and that's awesome.
Hmm.
But I'm wondering, is there any other way that you network? Like, do you have a LinkedIn or website?
I've actually just been applying. I work for a company, freelance also, and I work with Boostlingo. I actually just I left a job that I was not very happy in. I was also interpreting, but it was not for me. They really had their policy was very 9 to 5, and it did not give me the freedom that I want. So Boostlingo has been like perfect for me, and I work whenever I want. I usually work every day, and with the other company, it keeps me busy. So I'm pretty much busy throughout the day, but it's just I've been just applying to different companies, and right now I'm working with several with which I'm very happy.
That's great. Yeah, and I mean, much like other industries, a lot of times that's what it takes. You could just go on Indeed and
Right.
or whatever job search tool you're using and just keep applying and applying. So that's cool. Let's go back to kind of the mental side of things, like emotional mental side of things. How do you, as an interpreter who's maybe exposed to a lot of sort of difficult things, especially in mental health and medical assignments, how do you practice self-care after a long day of interpreting?
Oh goodness. You know what? At the beginning, it was so hard. At the beginning, it would really just make me feel horrible. I wouldn't cry during the call, but I would cry
Yeah,
sometimes at the end because there are some calls that are very difficult. Not just with mental, but for me, the hardest ones are the ones that you have to tell the patient or the LEP that they have 6 months to live or whatever.
of
And
course. Yeah.
yes, especially if it's video, my goodness, it's so hard. And you have to stay focused. You have to you have to be strong for them. And then at the end, okay, then at the end, if I want to cry, I cry. If I want to listen to music, I listen to music. I give myself some time to breathe and just try to relax and remind myself why I love this job and that yes, it's hard, but yes, I helped that person. Maybe I it would have been worse if they were very confused, if they were receiving really bad news and they didn't even know what was going on really, or just the
Hmm.
details. So so I
Yeah,
just
so
give myself some time, yes.
that's great. I mean, like everyone has their own tools, everyone has their own ritual or routine, right?
Mhm.
But I think like the underlying factor is really just to remember that you are making a big difference and you are and the job that you're doing is valuable and important. And if you weren't doing it, then many of these people wouldn't have access to the right sort of
Right.
um, resources that they need. So
Mhm.
yeah, I totally understand. It's got to be extremely difficult to tell somebody that they're, maybe have cancer
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
anything that maybe is going to impact their life like that. But um,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, taking a moment to breathe afterwards, taking a second to kind of ground yourself and not let counter-transference get involved,
Mhm,
like have the clients. I mean, it's so difficult not to want to
mhm.
empathize, and of course, we're humans, we empathize with everything, right? But
Right,
being able to kind of keep it separate is really important, like you said, to take a breather afterwards. Um,
right.
so
Hmm.
yeah, thanks for sharing your self-care practices after interpreting. Um, let's see, what else can I ask you? If you could maybe touch on, without giving too much detail, um, maybe one or two experiences in interpreting that have really impacted you, that would be cool to hear about.
Of course. Well, I think that for me, it's why I think I already spoke about this, but just the fact that I grew up as a child interpreter and just knowing how confused I was at many of the times also, and just knowing that right now I have the training, I have the experience to do it correctly and to help that child or help the parents and not having to have them interpret for the family members because it can be really hard to interpret for a family member also, and it's not the ideal thing. And just knowing that every single time I do my job, maybe that child does not have that responsibility, and that everything can be so much more clear. Just also what happened to my aunt and uncle, and knowing that there
Yeah,
are a lot more resources available now too, and I think it's that. I think it's because it's so personal for me. And I remember I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I had to go into my first C-section to interpret. And that
wow.
county which I lived in, I was pretty much like the interpreter for my family and my family's friends. So I had to go to all the doctor's appointment. I had to learn about so many things at such a young age, and just knowing that there were so many terms that I didn't know that I do know now. And I think that's what just keeps me motivated to keep learning, to keep doing what I do, and I see it in a different perspective as you said a while ago.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
wanted to ask you too as a follow-up.
mhm,
You know, when you're an interpreter in such high stress
mhm,
environments, like a C-section or a
mhm.
surgery, another type of surgery, how do you what kind of tools or skill sets do you apply when you are, you know, feeling this rush of adrenaline, to interpret as fast as you can exactly what's going on? Because there's going to be uncomfortable things that you're going to have to interpret, maybe things you're not uh, exactly comfortable saying, you know, even
Right,
in other circumstances. But of course, as an interpreter, you know, you have to interpret vulgarity,
right.
you have to interpret profanity, unpleasant information. Um, how have you been able to kind of make this
Well,
work?
mhm. I remind myself that I have to interpret, that I have to keep it clear, transparent. Sometimes, whenever one of the parties are maybe very, very upset and all they're doing is cursing, I do ask the other party, the patient or the customer is very upset, they're cursing, do you want me to interpret? And it depends on their answer. Sometimes, if they hear that they're just yelling and they're just like, no, thank you, you don't have to say that, interpreter. And sometimes they want to hear it, so I have to repeat it. It just kind of depends on the moment. But if it's not too, I mean, I have to say it. If it's not too vulgar, if it's maybe, I don't really feel like I have an option except for like how I said, whenever they're very upset and they're cursing at the other party, then I do ask.
Totally, yeah. I mean, you have to. You're kind of the vessel, right? You don't
Right.
have a choice. So basically,
Hmm.
yeah, I totally get it. Let me go back to my questions. 'Cause
Hmm.
second here. Um, let's see. What would you recommend to interpreters who are just starting out? You know, maybe they just finished a training or 40 hours bridging the gap, something like that,
Hmm.
um, and they really want to get their feet wet, as a freelancer, what would you kind of recommend to them as a stepping stone?
Goodness, we just have to. Oh, I remember at the beginning I was very, very nervous. You just kind of have to forget that. You have to leave that off to the side, that nervous feeling. You have to keep studying. That's what
Yep.
I have to do because there are terms that I used maybe 4 years ago, which I've not used yet, or I might use every several years from now. And I just have to keep on studying, watching YouTube videos to hear different terminology, and then looking them up. And especially, I think which makes it easier is if you love what you do. If you don't like what you do, it's always going to be hard. So you just kind of have to, that's the most important. You kind of have to have a bit of passion for your job because
Yeah,
I know,
totally.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this line of work, right? Because
Right.
you're working with you're working with people, and you're working with people who are maybe in difficult situations. So you have to have a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy, but you also have to have, the ability to be impartial, like we always say,
Yes.
right? Like code of
Yes.
conduct stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
Definitely.
uh, so let's see, what else can I talk about? I wanted to ask you, and I know that this is maybe a kind of a touchy topic, but
Mhm.
as a Spanish interpreter, how do you feel that the competition is lately? Is it becoming difficult in the industry? Have you noticed it since you started?
Yes, I have noticed that, but I don't really feel I don't really like
Threatened?
to say competition. No, I don't feel threatened. Because, well, there's a lot of work still. Maybe yes, there's more of us now, there's more interpreters, but that's actually a good thing. I mean, there's always
Yeah,
going to be customers, there's always going to be work, and I think that as long as you do what you like and you do it correctly and you feel passionate about it, you're going to be fine. I'm fine. Like I said, I just left this a stable job to be freelance full time, and I love it. It's like the best choice. It's actually the best choice I've made. I'm very
that's
happy.
I'm
Yes.
happy to. It's always really really nice to hear when freelancers are feeling fulfilled and
Yeah.
doing what they love. Um, so I think I'll move on to just a few questions from the crowd.
Okay.
So basically, one of the bigger questions: do you feel like as a childhood interpreter, it made you more aware that people um, need to be trained as interpreters and not just have family I mean have to
Yes.
actually train themselves or get trained.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's so many terms that I remember that I didn't even know what they were. I was a child, and I would just ask for maybe the meaning, and I didn't even speak Spanish correctly whenever I was a child. So you can just imagine how horrible it was. I don't even know how we got through it. So definitely that's why I know the importance of our job because I was that child. I was on the other side, and
Yep.
yes, I could see how my parents would sometimes suffer because they didn't know what was going on. So, of course, yes, this made me fully aware of the situation on the other half.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to have the perspective on both sides of things. It gives you so much more to work with and more dynamic. Um,
Yes.
yeah. um, so I'm looking to see if we have any other questions, but I think we are maybe going to wrap up a bit early.
Hmm.
Um, unless there's anything else you wanted to share with the group.
Um, no, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, everybody who's listening, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have our next webinar in May. It's going to be with a CCHI director who's going to tell us about her program. about how to get certified and the direction that's going. So please stay tuned for that. And Sonia, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a
No, no, thank
pleasure.
you.
Um, have a great rest of your vacation wherever you are, and
Thank-
um, and keep on enjoying the freelance life.
Okay, thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you. Bye.
Likewise, bye.